Today on Locked On Rockies, Purple Row expanded on the youth movement that we talked about yesterday. So let's dive into that a little bit, look ahead to the Washington series, and take a look at the upcoming schedule to check in on our road to 61.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 20th day of August in the year 2024. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, guess what? You're in the right spot, because that's what we do around here each and every day, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk. And we're on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you can be part of the show. You can fire off your Rockies hot takes. You can let me know what's on your mind every time you like a video, when you subscribe to the channel, anytime you let your buddies know about the Locked On Rockies podcast. You're helping the show grow, and I really, really do appreciate that. So thank you so much for rocking and rolling with us here and making us your first listen of the day. Today on the show, we're going to talk about the youth movement a little bit more. We're going to talk about the Washington series, which begins tonight, and we're going to look at the schedule here to do a quick update on our road to 61. Before we dive into all that, just want to remind you that I am Paul Holden, your Rockies fan extraordinaire. Been bringing you this daily Colorado Rockies talk for over 3 seasons now, and been bringing you, been bringing the love of the Colorado Rockies for my entire life. We are brought to you today by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. All right, folks. So we were talking about how there's more evidence of the Rockies turning to the young guys. There's more examples of the Rockies turning to the young guys, and there's some bits and pieces for people to start looking at there as we're following the team throughout the rest of the season. Yes, the usual suspects are still going to get playing time, but it does seem like at least 4 to 5 young players will be in the lineup for the Rockies each and every night, depending on the rotation and depending who's playing where. The big question, I think, for the rest of the season and how the Rockies are going to handle that will be Chris Bryant. But I think Chris Bryant at this point will probably more impact Charlie Blackmon's playing time at the DH position. But we'll see if he plays. I mean, I guess that's really up in the air at this point. I mean, it's something I haven't dove in, I guess, a ton to. We talked about it. I'm sure I ranted and raved about it when it first happened. But, I know we talked about the decisions to be made. But, so I'm not really worried too much about him, because I don't know what his timetable even is going to be. I mean, it's August 20th at this point. I mean, you have a month and change left of games left. Is it really worth shoehorning Chris Bryant in there? 19 and a half home runs. Talk about a whiff on that one, folks. Woo! That was an over I missed on from our friends over at FanDuel. So it's all right. So it's good to see. And I wasn't the only one talking about this. Of course, Purple Row, always doing great work. And Mac Wilcox writes, the movement is on at 20th and Blake. So here. I just wanted to go and just kind of read some of the highlights that Mac has put up of some of the young players that are on the Rockies here to just kind of pop some names in there. Of course, let's start off with Drew Romo. If you aren't too familiar, Drew Romo has been longly considered a top prospect for the Rockies and a top catching prospect for the Rockies, and could be a total game changer if things pan out the way that things are, projected to and such. I know that's obviously not how it happens, obviously, but there's definitely a lot to really like about Romo. And the big news with him, of course, is he just made his major league debut. He was joined in the lineup by fellow youngsters Ezekiel Tovar and Jordan Beck. This is from Mac's piece, by the way. 2 players who are likely to factor heavily into the team's future plans. In fact, it was the first time a Rockies lineup included 3 players aged 23 or younger since September 28th, 2008, when Dexter Fowler, Ian Stewart, and Troy Tulowitzki were all in the same lineup. And fans might be in a different spot with that many young players coming up in 2008 right after. being in the World Series. I wasn't as diehard. So I do actually, that's an interesting storyline. I mean, I wonder what that was like. Were fans calling for the Rockies to go all in after going in the World Series, while also sitting there and realizing like, hey, we got some real good guys coming up. This Tulo guy, pretty good. But it's interesting I wonder what that thought process was like after that season there. Especially Dexter Fowler is an underrated, not only ball player, but Rocky as well. Ian Stewart, I think, falls into that. That's when you're talking Rockies, those are three pretty stalwart names there. But so that's an interesting, and I love to hear that fact, right? I love to hear that specifically in this season, because that's the sign we're looking for, right? That's the moment. Is it a little bit later than I'd like to have happen? Yes. Is it a little bit does it come at the expense of a little bit of sanity this year? I think so. But that does highlight the change there. And just like I was mentioning, the Rockies playing 4 young guys in the lineup, it seems just about every night now, and the rotations of who's going to get in. These are the signs we need to see. The losses and the Rockies looking outmatched and overwhelmed. Like, it doesn't sting as, and I know this is a weird way to justify this, but like when I'm watching the bad games, at least I can focus on development instead of when I've watched bad games in the past and I've instead focused on the underperformance of certain players and the underperformance of veterans. And it's not like the Rockies were chock full of players and veterans this year that was going to get in the way. The Rockies did start the year off by doing some interesting things and embracing some interesting like Montero, for example. And then they had Beck up before he was hurt. They've had Shunk, they had Tolia up and down. They were doing some stuff before ultimately coming to this point where this is the right decision. This is how the Rockies move forward. This is how the Rockies players develop. This is how they get closer to being the good players that we want them to be. You need to get them exposed to this is it. And especially for the Rockies, it's like you're going to face the best. Not only you don't just play every team in baseball. You play in a loaded division. More often than not, you are seeing an all-star caliber player, or you're pitching against an all-star or an all-star caliber player. You need to be ready for this moment. And now is the time to start building the confidence in yourself that you can play and handle this level during a season in which it's a wash. During a season in which a Rockies podcast is focusing on the fact on a hopes of getting to 61 wins, which is pretty far below 500 when you think about it. So this is the type of stuff where you complain and you have rightful complaints and issues with the Rockies front office and the organization, and they're justified. But this is a moment where you do have to remind yourself. You do have to tell yourself, okay, this is different. This is the first time since 2008 they have gone this young and they've gone this aggressive with young prospects. That's different. That's what they needed to do. So does it absolve everything? No, but it's again, it's just when you're talking about the narrative of the Rockies, when you're talking about the story of the Rockies, and when you're talking about the current situation of the Rockies, this does matter. Just like your frustrations of the trade deadline matter, and frustrations in the offseason of not of the XYZ, that all matters too. But again, it is now when you can point to something like that stat, it shows that this is different with the Rockies when it comes to getting young guys playing time. Let's go back to the piece here from Mac Wilcox. They in turn are backed up by a pitching staff that features multiple rookies such as Angel Chavi, Bradley Blaylock, and Tanner Gordon. Finally, the bench is filled up by newcomers Hunter Goodman and Aaron Shunk, even though Goodman was optioned yesterday in favor of Nolan Jones, another player who is still in that figuring it out phase. And you know what? If it is another guy that's going to be a real interesting piece of the puzzle. All of this talk and all of these players and all these things we've talked about with young guys this year, and we haven't talked about Nolan Jones basically at all. We've talked about his struggles and we've talked about some issues, but Again, now where does Nolan Jones fit into this puzzle? And boy, does that further complicate the Chris Bryant situation as well. But anyway, let's see here. Here's just a little bit of highlights again here from Mac Wilcox's piece on Purple Row. The youth movement is on at 20th and Blake. Beck recently recorded a 3-hit effort in the win over the Padres. Victor Vodnik, playing in his first full season in Major League Baseball, has become a staple in the back end of Colorado's relief corps. Gordon has pitched far better in the month of August than July. Romo figures to be the catcher of the future. And second-year Nolan Jones returned to the Rockies and looks to return to his Rookie of the Year finalist form. You know, a month of baseball for Nolan Jones to this is all just work, you know, an adjustment. So he'll probably see a lot of playing time, I would imagine. But here's what Mac follows up with. Now, there's a difference between having these young stars on the team and actually using them. There are still those that are on the outside looking in, such as Goodman, who had seen his playing time diminish in recent weeks prior to yesterday's option. Prior to his injury, Chris Bryant was also viewed by some as blocking others like Michael Toglia from getting the playing time like they needed to develop. It's not a perfect science. Still, it seems like the Rockies are determined to continue to let these newer faces get acclimated to baseball at Mile High. Here's what Bud Black had to say about this. The best experience for him, and he's using Jordan Beck as an example here. The best experience for him is to learn. The best experience for him to learn is by playing. He's got to get out there and experience Major League pitching in Major League games. When we brought him up in May, it was interrupted. So now he's back on track. He's going to get his playing time and hopefully continue to grow. I like hearing Bud Black talk this way. It's encouraging to hear Bud Black talk this way. I'm going to talk more about that coming up after the break. We'll also preview the series and look ahead at our road to 61. That's all coming up on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about our friends at FanDuel. And FanDuel's got you covered for all your sports betting needs. Why? Because they're America's #1 sports book. Listen, I like I said, I took the over on the Chris Bryant home runs this year, and it didn't pan out for me. But you know what? I bet you are a more responsible and smart gambler than I. You can put your baseball knowledge to the test. And while you're at it, you can enjoy a promo. Well, we have something a little different for you here at FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket. So that means you can see Bo Nix on the go from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season afternoon Sunday game out of market. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. I use NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube and YouTube TV, and I really enjoy it. I really enjoy the multi-view settings. I really enjoy how consistent the app is when I take it on the go. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. Shout outs to everyone for making us your first listen. And if you need a second listen of the day, if you love baseball talk, well, Sully, our pal Sully over at Locked On MLB, he's got you covered, breaking down all things baseball, all the leagues, all the teams, all season long and throughout the postseason. So don't miss out on all the fun there with Sully on Locked On MLB. And SiriusXM has got your play-by-play coverage all season long for the Colorado Rockies. So you can take that on the go too. All right, folks. So I was talking about, I liked hearing Bud Black open up and say that the best experience for these young guys is to play. And I agree. So the question is going to be, how far does that go? How far does that get pushed? Is it only going to be on Sundays that we see Jake Cave out of the lineup and the McMahons out of the lineup and the Blackmons out of the lineup? And the Rogers out of the lineup. How much catching is Drew Romo going to do compared to Jacob Stallings? Because the interesting factor and the interesting thing in this situation is Bud Black. We know Bud Black has a passion for playing veteran players. He loves his veteran guys, and he loves just baseball. That's where I kind of put Bud Black in the old school mentality. It's just that's just kind of his thing. And that's probably why veteran players love playing for him. and it's interesting, but the things to note here, what's interesting with Bud Black in this, and now getting a lot more of these young guys playing time, kind of seems like contract stuff is. I'm not saying I'm going to be shocked if he comes back. I'm not saying that I don't think that there's like an over 50% chance that Bud Black returns as the manager next year. But when I just search around, and then when you kind of read some stuff, and you've read the last few reports on contract talks, doesn't sound necessarily like it doesn't sound like it's a done deal. Doesn't sound like it's necessarily something that it is for certain. So maybe this is a situation in which Bud Black is reflecting and saying, I got to do something different. I gotta focus on the young guys. I have to do what I know my talents are, which is develop pitching and develop young players and make a statement. Could also be Bud Black sees the writing on the wall. Could also be not that interested in this. Could also see some things that he doesn't necessarily like about the roster. Could see things that he might not like about the direction of the organization. But with the farm system climbing, with Dollander being, I think, going to be potentially an arm that raises eyebrows nationally, if it pans out as it might. It's total projection right there. The Rockies manager job, it has to be an enticing one. I really do. I think it is. And because there's so many interesting young guys. There's so many guys that still have so many things to prove. There's so much room that has to develop. But it's like, dang, Brenton Doyle. Because now 2 years in a row, we've had situations with two young guys in which you get pretty sold. And again, consistency is what I preach. So the jury's still out on both of them. But last year as a rookie, we saw Ezekiel Tovar and we were like, hey, ain't perfect, but there's a lot to love there. And then, we got the inkling with Brenton Doyle, but it was the whole question was the offense. And then we get this version of Brenton Doyle, a version that I don't think very many expected, maybe. I don't know. Maybe there were some people out there maybe that were on the know. So second year where the young guy steps up. What happens if next year it's Nolan Jones rebound season mixed with Beck? I mean, there's your outfield right there, right? I mean, if you move on from two veteran players, that could be your outfield next year. Mixed with and then you have the person making the most consecutive amount of starts at first base since Todd Helton right now on first base, Michael Toglia. So, I mean, there's clearly a situation in which the young Rockies can force their way into the lineup. And it is going to be, is Bud Black ready to make those calls? Is Bud Black going to show that he will make those decisions? And that's the situation in which I don't know. I got to see it this season. I got to see three youngsters, and I got to see a Doyle, and maybe we will tonight. I don't know if the lineup. No, the lineup's probably not out quite yet as of recording, but I'd like to see a Jones, Beck, Doyle outfield. I'd like to see Shunk continuing to fill in and get some at bats. And in reality, I'd like Hunter Goodman to come back up and get a shot too, and get more of a shot. How much playing time the young players get is is hand in hand with Bud Black. Obviously, he's the manager, but that's why it matters when he's talking about getting the young guys experience. But that is also, it's baseball talk. That's also manager talk. So we'll see. I mean, we will see here, but here's what Bill Schmidt added, and this is also from Max Peace on Purple Row. The fact that these guys are improving. As an organization, you're always looking forward to these guys getting to the big leagues, and more of them are making the steps you need to make. That's what we've been striving to do, is build a foundation to support, ultimately, a championship organization. All we're trying to do is keep improving our talent level at the draft, Senior Director Scouting Operations Mark Gustafson and Vice President Assistant General Manager of Scouting Danny Montgomery did a tremendous job bringing in some additional talent. So obviously Schmidt's confident. Obviously Schmidt's feeling good. But there is still that element of it's got to be proven. The pudding has not yet been proved. But there is a lot of stuff to be intrigued by, and it does make the last month and change of the season more interesting when the young guys play as they try to fight their way into a starting spot. But pretty crazy to already be looking and talking about the final month of baseball coming up here in just a little over a week. And time flies, man. That's how it goes. All right, let's talk about the upcoming series with the Nationals and take a look at our road to 61 coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about our friends that help make this show possible, and that includes PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. So no sneaky waiver wire pickups, nothing like that. Your lineup, your way, your stat projections, more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and watch the winnings roll in. You can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. Don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. So maybe it's base hits, stolen bases, strikeouts, walks, whatever it might be. See it all for yourself on the PrizePicks app. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That code, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, run your game. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast. We are free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. If your team is the Colorado Rockies, you're in the right spot. You have found a daily Colorado Rockies podcast where we're talking rocks. Really do appreciate all your support on the channel and everything. Like I said, anytime you like the videos, you share them, you subscribe, all that stuff. Such a big help. All right, Rockies taking on the Nationals here. The Nationals have lost 4 out of their last 5. The Rockies have lost 3 out of their last 5. Some similar numbers between these two teams, but before I get there, I'll give you a moment to answer like it's like one of those kids shows. Where do you think the separation happened? With the pitching. Yeah, we all said it. Yeah. But it's interesting to note how similar these teams are in a lot of categories and different in one. And that's definitely been a result of the second half and kind of the later half of the season here. Rockies and Nationals both have a team batting average of .244. The Rockies have driven in 4 more runs than the Nationals this season. Rockies have driven in 534. The Nationals have driven in 530. 1,031 hits for the Rockies, 1,011 hits for the Nationals. So only 20 hits separating the two teams there, neck and neck throughout those categories. But here's a difference maker. And the other stats, that's just kind of interesting to see how close they are. But this difference in these stats could actually play a role in the series. Rockies have hit 136 home runs this year compared to the Nationals 103. So if you're the Rockies, you have to be able to make sure that you are limiting the long ball, which is tough because right on the bump, right off the whip, it is Austin Gomber. 24 home runs allowed this season and 30 walks. Austin Gomber needs to come out and be sharp. There are plenty of power hitting players on this team, but like we said, not a lot. The potential is there, but not a lot of production. CJ Abrams is the leader for the Nationals with 17 home runs. So again, it's not like it's going to be an overpower thing, but it's going to be a big problem for a home run prone pitcher in Austin Gomber if he starts giving up the long ball there. So on the flip side, the Rockies got to be aggressive. The Rockies got to be swinging the bat and get out there and start driving in some runs. They're going up against DJ Hurst tonight here in 55 innings pitched. He's allowed 10 home runs and 19 walks. So good professional at bats. Hopefully, I know with how aggressive the Rockies are, they got to be careful. But they also need to make sure that they are putting the ball in play and putting the thump behind it there. Washington has a slightly better OBP at 311 compared to the Rockies 306. Slugging is in favor of the Rockies. So the Rockies are slugging 400, whereas the Nationals are slugging 376. And here's the difference maker. 5.55 ERA as a team for the Rockies. 4.38 for the Nationals. A whip of 1.53 for the Rockies, and the Nationals a whip of 1.35. The Rockies have walked 430 batters. The Nationals 367. Rockies 854 Ks. Nationals 996. Opponent batting average against the Rockies 288, 262 against the Nationals. So clearly the pitching matchup favors the Nationals as it does in most of these series. But the thing to go back to, like we were talking about the home runs there, it's not a huge gap here. I mean, this is not a team that's necessarily been as dominated teams. I mean, they outscored the Rockies in not too badly actually, but it was 18-20. It was the Rockies were outscored 20-14. So a six-run differential there for a team with one of the worst run differentials in baseball. But again, I'm not seeing much there that blows my socks off like we've seen in some of these other matchups as well. And we're seeing back half of the rotation as well. We're seeing at least some of the later in the lineup pitchers here for the Nationals and probably throughout the rest of the series. The big question again, of course, though, it can be, we can look at the numbers, we can look at the stats, we can look at whatever, but it's the road Rockies. What's going to happen with the Rockies going on the road? Currently 17-46 away from Coors Field right now. So a completely different team, it feels like, but a team that has gotten leads, a team that has been, maybe hasn't gotten the job done all the time on the road, but has seen some success on the road. The Nationals not necessarily a dominant force at home, but when you're as below 500 as they are, they're still definitely well in the mix, kind of in the Rocky situation where they're pretty comfortable at home. 28-32 at home, but it looks like it's roughly the same there for both. I think 28 wins there for on the road for the Nationals as well. So not necessarily thriving, but not necessarily too far behind as well, as the Nationals find themselves 13 games below 500 here. And I don't necessarily know if the team was thinking that they were going to be. I don't know what the thought process going into the season was for the Nationals. So kind of hard for me to gauge some things here. But like I said, the big storyline I think to watch here is how Gomber can is Gomber's performance. Can he be effective? Can he be efficient? And can he keep the ball in the yard and let that good defense work against a team that doesn't hit a ton of home runs? Can hit home runs, has players that are capable of hitting home runs. Just can the Rockies prevent that? All right, let's take a quick peek at the upcoming schedule to just see where we're at with our road to 61. And the good news is they've a nice little stretch here. But to still get there, the Rockies they need, what is that? 15 more wins. 15 more wins, I think, gets it done. So a series win here would be the start, because, man, there's a stretch where I think this series and the Miami series after this Yankees series is going to be clutch. Now, the Yankees have a weird thing where they play down to their competition, it seems like, but it's in New York, so I can't be all that confident. If they're gonna hit the 61, this Washington series, Baltimore series, these two are I'm sorry, not Baltimore, Miami series. I think these are the two best series for the Rockies to be winning, because you're at New York. Baltimore, you play Baltimore, but it's at Coors, so that's a benefit, but they're really good and really good at hitting home runs, so I don't have a lot of hope for that. And then going on the road to Atlanta and Milwaukee, I don't like that at all. So we don't want to go to zoom out too fully here, but if the Rockies are going to hit that number, this Washington series and the Miami series coming up are going to play a big role in that. Or the Rockies are just going to be having to play some upset here because there are some series here that I'm not feeling good about. And we'll talk about those when they come up, because that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Got a game recap and breaking down things, all things Rockies coming your way tomorrow, so don't miss that. But in the meantime, folks, thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. Shout outs to all of you. For your second listen of the day, go check out Locked On MLB with our guy Sully. If you need more Colorado sports coverage, go check out Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Nuggets, Locked On Buffs, all free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. If you need more Colorado sports coverage there, find us on YouTube, find us on your favorite streaming services. And until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.